Pope Francis says unity and putting others first will help heal a world full of divisions and still fighting the coronavirus pandemic. The Holy Father says the Encyclical in Assisi, while there he celebrated Mass and visited the tomb of St. Francis of Assisi. The letter is called Fratelli Tutti. Translated, it means all brothers. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colin Flynn joins us now with more. Colin, so good to see you. So this is the Pope's third encyclical. What can you tell us about Fratelli Tutti?
Good evening, Tracy. Well, there's a lot in this 200-page document, but here's some of the key takeaways. At the very start of the document, Pope Francis talks about a wounded world. He cites poverty, war, persecution, and the plight of migrants. This encyclical is him laying out the way he thinks, working together, the world can try and heal. And this is where he calls for fraternity and social friendship, that shared responsibility we have for one another, to be brothers and sisters, and not just Catholics, but this is to people of all faiths and to people who have no faith at all. Now, core to the document, he dedicates an entire chapter to this, is the parable of the Good Samaritan, who stops and gives of his time to a beggar. Pope Francis reminds us of this story, asking us to remember the dignity of every human and that the most valuable thing we can give to another is our time.
I know the Pope also spoke about global politics and capitalism. What more can you tell us about that?
Well, as a social encyclical, this document touches on all aspects of political, social and economic life. He gives the coronavirus pandemic as an example of how he feels the political system and societal structure in many parts of the world has failed those who need it the most. And he warns that, as a people, we can come out of this pandemic worse off or better off than we went into it. He calls into question, as he puts it, the magic theories of capitalism, which he claims have been seen to fail, and that the world needs politics of love. In Chapter 7, he discusses the conditions for peace and reconciliation, deploring the injustices of war, saying that there should never, ever be a reason for a just war, and calling for an end to the use of the death penalty worldwide. He also emphasized again that the death penalty is inadmissible, recalling the 2018 update to the Catechism's teaching on that very topic. And yesterday, at the press conference for Fratelli Tutti at the Vatican, I spoke to Cardinal Michael Czerny and asked him if he thought this document in parts painted a bleak picture of the Western world today.
Can you find me somebody who says that the world is better than it's painted in the encyclical? Can you find somebody who will say, honestly, it's not like this. People really are much better off and much happier and much more secure, and their dignity is much more, no. Unfortunately, it's a realistic picture.
Now, Colin, one of the other strong points of the encyclical is the Pope's teachings on borders. What exactly did he have to say about that?
Well, Tracy, the Pope speaks very clearly about the rights that everyone in the world has to, as he puts it, the goods of the planet, and that no one should be denied these goods if they need them for their survival, and even if that means having to access or travel to another territory, meaning another country. So to get some insight on this after the conference, I spoke with a political theologian from the UK who was one of the speakers at the Vatican press conference, Professor Anna Rowlands.
He's very clear that the Church is an open borders community. He's also very clear that borders of a nation state may exist for a reason of preserving the common good. However, they are never, ever primary. They always have to admit of a duty to provide hospitality, gift exchange and cultural exchange.
And Tracy, in the encyclical's conclusion, Pope Francis said that the text was inspired not only by St. Francis, but also by non-Catholics such as Martin Luther King Jr., Desmond Tutu and Mahatma Gandhi, as well as the French Catholic missionary Blessed Charles de Foucauld.
Now, Fratelli Tutti is the Pope's great invitation to rediscover the we, fraternity, brotherhood, social friendship, because that's the great thing missing from modernity. If modernity has been about liberty, equality and fraternity, fraternity's been the great missing element without which liberty and equality don't make sense. So at a time of growing conflict, tension, polarization, this is an invitation to recover, to find and recover our sense of ourselves as one human family. To me, that one of the most striking things in the document is a powerful critique of contemporary politics. So a critique of liberal individualism on the one hand and populism on the other, and carving out this kind of third space for a politics which is really what we would call a politics of the common good, politics as service of all and the vulnerable and so on. So a regeneration of politics is certainly one thing I take away. The second one is the importance of overcoming disagreement, conflict, polarization through rediscovering our ability to have dialogue and healthy listening, to be able to walk together with our differences, to rediscover that ability. And then the last one I took away really is, I mean, he's got a very powerful, beautiful exegesis on the Good Samaritan. And really to say at this time, I mean, the document is not a response to the pandemic, but it's made relevant by the pandemic. Yeah, we are all, he says, you know, we are either the Good Samaritan, or the people that pass by, or we're the robber, or we're the wounded person. You know, in a crisis, in a way so there's an invitation for us to choose, which is very Francis, to say, right, where do we want to be? Are we going to be part of building a new kind of society out of this crisis? I see Fratelli Tutti as part of a triptych. I think it begins with Evangelii Gaudium, which was about restoring our relationship to God. Laudato Si was about restoring our relationship to creation, and this is about restoring our relationship to each other. So we've got this kind of triptych of relationships that need to be restored, that all require, if you like, a kind of ecological regeneration and rescuing from the technocratic paradigm, if you like. So I think that on its own, it's a very powerful call. I think it's a call to a new kind of humanism, which we desperately need at this moment. But I think its real power is in completing that trio of teachings. I think this is a document which, even though actually it's less personal than Evangelii Gaudium, it feels a bit more like Laudato Si in the way it's been written. You know, it's heavily quoted. You know, lots of quoting of himself and each other. So it's slightly heavier, but nonetheless, I think it's very him, particularly in this idea of the people that he's trying to recover. There's some very Francis notes in it, and there's something that stood out for me in there, which was to rediscover graciousness, which of course is what he has done so much in his own ministry, in what he has modelled. So I think this could be an example really of where a document really comes from deep within him and is really a meditation on the Abu Dhabi document on fraternity, which was issued last year, and he calls out Sheikh Al-Tayeb of Egypt, with whom he wrote that document, and a call for religions to work together to build this new world. So yeah, it's a very beautiful document.
Visits Assisi to sign the third encyclical, Fratelli Tutti, Brothers All. There, he will celebrate a private mass. He will explain the new document at the Angelus this Sunday, October 4th, on the Feast of St. Francis. At noon, he will publish the text. In the new encyclical, Pope Francis will call for solidarity, personal and community responsibility in the face of difficult challenges such as a pandemic, which has shown that the world is more connected than ever.
Tutti siamo fratelli. San Francesco di Assisi diceva tutti fratelli. E per questo uomini e donne di ogni confessione religiosa oggi ci uniamo nella preghiera e nella penitenza per chiedere la grazia della guarigione di questa pandemia.
In the document, the Pope will present the major proposals he launched during the pandemic, from working together to overcome the problem, to working together to get out of the crisis in better shape, and respecting nature to avoid this crisis. The text also reminds Catholics of the importance of the joint document on the human brotherhood that the Pope and the Imam of Al-Azhar signed in Abu Dhabi in 2019.
And categorizes the main proposals of the social discourses of his pontificate in Rome and during his trips. He summarizes them in an encyclical to propose them as a solemn magisterium addressed to all Catholics. In front of global indifference and the temptation to detach ourselves from others, the Pope asks to remember that we are all in the same boat. He says the only option in front of the world's suffering and people's wounds is to follow the example of the Good Samaritan, who helps an injured man without worrying about who he is, what he believes, nor where he's from.
Essere capaci di avere compassione. Questa è la chiave. Questa è la nostra chiave. Se tu davanti a una persona bisognosa non senti compassione, se il tuo cuore non si commuove, vuol dire che qualcosa che non va. Stai attento, stiamo attenti. Non ci lasciamo trascinare dalla insensibilità egoistica.
The Pope asks to recognize the intrinsic dignity of every human being, who always deserves to be acknowledged, valued, and loved, regardless of individual ideas, feelings, practices, and sins. In Fratelli Tutti, the Pope warns against reductive anthropological visions and against a profit-based economic model that does not hesitate to exploit, discard, and even kill human beings.
La ambición desenfrenada de dinero que gobierna. Ese es el estiércol del diablo. El servicio para el bien común queda relegado.
The idea is that businessmen strive to create jobs for people, not for speculation. The Pope recalls the drama of migration. He is concerned about outbreaks of xenophobia and racism. He advocates for helping people in their native countries so that they aren't forced to leave.
Pope Francis will have released his third encyclical or teaching letter. And it's called FRATELLI TUTTI, which is an Italian expression. So it actually means brothers and sisters all. And so it's the beginning of an encyclical or teaching document from Pope Francis on fraternity and on social friendship. He talks about dialogue and friendship in society and about renewing our encounters with one another, of seeking forgiveness and reconciliation and healing and moving towards peace. And finally, he invites all the religions of the world to be at service to humanity, to be a sign of a witness, if you like, to fraternal living and of social friendship.